Thousands of demonstrators have rallied in Bangkok demanding the resignation of Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-ocha. Some are also calling for the abolition of Section 112 of the Penal Code, which has been used to punish anyone who criticizes the monarchy. The protests have been mounting since mid-July. Our correspondent Tony Chen has been following the situation for us from Bangkok. He joins me now live today with an update. Tony, students are among the protesters, but what other groups are taking part also in the demonstrations?
Well, yeah, these protests, which have been going on for several months now, have been characterized as student protests. But what we started to see last month and what we're seeing very definitely today is that expanding much more widely. There's been a big presence here today of the red shirts. If you remember, in 2010, they were the group that took over central bank, so calling for the government at the time to step down. We're seeing supporters of Future Forward, one of the political parties that did very well in last year's elections, but was disbanded earlier, outlawed earlier this year. And I think we're seeing ordinary people coming out too. There is a lot of dissatisfaction with this government at the moment. The economy, with the COVID shutdowns and the international travel ban, is doing very badly. And I think there's a feeling here very widely that the government is just not well set up to look after it. So I think we're seeing the confluence of all these different groups, all of this different unhappiness coming to a head, and the students are the ones who seem to be able to tap into it. And they've certainly gathered a very big crowd here today, the largest we've seen in these protests, that, as you said, have gone on for several months now.
Tony, we can all imagine the type of pressure these demonstrations are adding to the government in the middle of a pandemic. So how are the government and law enforcement reacted to the protests?
Well, they're stuck a little bit because I think they recognize that this has gathered a lot of popular support. The Prime Minister Prayuth Chan-ocha came. He urged people not to come here because he said there was a very distinct threat of COVID-19 spreading through the crowd. Well, that's rather disingenuous because we haven't had any local transmission for several months now. I think obviously he's trying to, and his supporters are trying to get across the impression that there is danger here. But I have to say the atmosphere is very relaxed. It's more like a festival. There is live music, food stalls, the big stage behind us, which I think we're going to see bands on later on. The protesters say they're going to stay overnight as well. There are 10,000 police on duty in Bangkok today. We can see some of them over there protecting the Grand Palace, but I don't think there's any serious threat of violence. How the government reacts in the long term, however, is going to be a very big question. The Prime Minister has promised that he will look at constitutional reform, but he said that from the beginning, and I think the longer he stalls on that, the bigger these protests get, and the more difficult the position he's in. So after today, I think we're going to have to see him do something substantial, or these protests are going to continue to grow.